That sounds good.
Okay, I'm now recording.
Wonderful. Okay, so basically what we're going to start is with the prelude and the screen share, which is going to be Amanda and Susie. And Amanda, why don't you count us back from 10?
All right. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Wait, I don't have Susie in the. Oh, never mind. All right. 3, 2, 1.
friends, to this time of worship. Welcome, welcome friends to this time of worship. Welcome to first-time viewers, to relative newcomers to our faith, and to longtime members of this congregation. How good it is to gather together virtually across the interweb. I am the Reverend Dr. Kelly Murphy Mason, Senior Minister of the Unitarian Universalist Society of Wellesley Hills, and I extend a warm welcome to everybody watching the broadcast of this Sunday service, either through the UU Wellesley Hills website or our Facebook page. We are grateful for our remote participants who continuously widen the reach of this beloved community. Whether you are feeling jubilant or heartbroken, frightened or courageous, you belong with us. May all of us find peace in this hour. Whoever you are, or wherever you find yourself on your personal journey, whatever the sources of your faith, we are glad to have you with us today as we hold our virtual service honoring the touchstone of the divine. Welcome, everyone.
Ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus ibi est.
Good morning. I am the Acting Director of Educational and Family Ministries, Michael Packard. At UU Wellesley Hills, we are celebrating 150 years of gathering in community. For generations, we have been part of a long liberal tradition of reason and tolerance, and hope and liberation. Please know that for this virtual worship, you can download the order of service and the hymn selections from our This Sunday page in our website. Be sure to follow UU Wellesley Hills on our social media outlets to keep current on our many happenings. This week, in our weekly update, Molly Walsh, a member of our Social Action Council, issued a request for donations of old iPads for veterans hospitalized at the VA. Please contact her if you have one you can spare. Always feel free to post any news you have for this community in our UU Wellesley Hills Facebook group share. All weekly events, including our casual chat, our tech talk, midweek reflection, musical meditations, all ages activity, bedtime stories, and coffee circle can be accessed online. You will find the links for all those listed in the monthly calendar on our website. Immediately following this service, we will hold our virtual fellowship hour in Zoom. Our intern minister, Joan DeArtemis, will host. Tonight, our Crafts and Conversations group will gather in the church Zoom room at 7 p.m. if you'd like to join them there. Each Sunday, we take a few moments to recognize some of our many volunteers. Today, we'd like to thank the fine volunteers who make up the Worship Associates team, headed by UU Wellesley Hills member, Kathy Kaufman. Today, Worship Associate Naomi Cameron is offering her touchstone reflection on the divine. For the duration of our campus closure, members of Worship Associates team are leading the midweek reflection every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. So join them in our church Zoom room, then for a communal time of calming and centering. This year, we are building beloved community as part of our 2019-2020 Touchstone project, and in April, the touchstone is the divine. Whether or not you believe in God, you must believe this. When we as a species abandon our trust in a power greater than us, we abandon our sense of accountability, writes Dan Brown. To whom or to what are you ultimately accountable? We encourage you to join a monthly Touchstone group if you have not already. And that while church campus is closed, all our Touchstone groups will be meeting virtually. Now, we invite those of you gathering, watching our broadcast in the worship service on our UU Wellesley Hills Facebook page. Take a moment to announce yourself in our audience and to to greet one another in this electronic community of ours.
Here we speak to God, the Goddess, the Spirit of life, the eternal. We speak to the mysterious thread that connects us to one another and to the universe. We speak to the deep wisdom at the center of our beings. We embody the yearning of all people to be touched more deeply, to hear one another more keenly, to see each other's joys and sorrows as our own, and to know that we are not alone, unless we create solitude for ourselves, and even then, community awaits us. Out of our yearning, we have come to this religious community. May we help each other to proclaim the possibilities that we see, to create the community we desire, to worship what is worthy in our lives, to teach the truth as we know it, and to serve with justice in all the ways we can, to the end that our yearning is assuaged and our lives are fulfilled in one another. These are the words of the Reverend Susan Manker Seal. Let us worship together. The flaming chalice is a shining symbol of our Unitarian Universalist commitments. The words for our chalice lighting are printed in your order of service for this Sunday. If you have a chalice on hand at home, you may want to light yours now. We light these chalices to illuminate our faithful way forward as an inspirational community of hope. Together, we seek spiritual growth. We strive for just and responsible action. We dedicate ourselves to leading lives of compassion and purpose. Knowing how we have been blessed, we choose to bless the world.
Good morning. I'm Susie Kartran, the Director of Music. It's so nice to be back with you. I invite you now to sing with me in our opening hymn, number 115, God of Grace and God of Glory. God of grace
Did you see the sunrise this morning? Such a divine, godlike almost power. It's no wonder that religious people from generations have revered the sun. Today, I'd like to tell you about one such religious person. As a boy, Zoroaster did not have an easy life. People during his time were at the mercy of the weather. They didn't know a lot about farming or raising animals, to say nothing of climate fluctuations. But Zoroaster's father tried to give him the best possible chance at learning about the world as he could. He became a pupil of a magi, the most learned man in his area. So Zoroaster learned about the stars. He learned about farming and caring for the sick, among many other things. But he still wondered, why was there so much sickness? Why was there so much fighting and evil when there was so much good in the world? When Zoroaster got older, he left his village in search of answers to his many questions. He went across the forest, over the mountains, and stretched through a desert until he arrived at a high cliff. There he found a cave where he stayed for a while. One morning, when the shadows still hung low in the sky, Zoroaster went down to the valley below. He immersed himself in the flowing waters of the river. And when he stepped out on its banks, he looked out to the east across a great plain. There on the horizon, he saw the rosy light of the rising sun. He stood motionless, watching as the beams crept slowly across the sky. The reddening deepened into a darker rose as the beams stretched further. Zoroaster forgot himself. Then he felt as if he was being lifted off of the earth. He saw a bright figure in front of him, an angel 9 times his size. The angel seemed to ask him, "Would you come with me to a land of the unseen spirits?" He continued to rise up and up until he came to a place called heaven. There were many more spirits and angels there, including the great god of light. One angel asked Zoroaster, "What is it you most wish for?" Zoroaster answered, "Above all else, I wish for goodness." The angel said, "You have answered well, for a good thought is good, a good word is better, but best of all is a good deed." Now, how long Zoroaster was in this place, he could have no idea. He had never experienced anything like this, and he would definitely not know about the passage of time. But when the spell did finally break, and he felt more like himself, Zoroaster sat to think. What did it all mean? Sunrise, sunsets, there's light, and there's darkness time after time. "Ah," he said, I believe I have the answer. In the universe, there are 2 great forces, light and darkness. One is good, one is not good. They are constantly warring against each other. But in the end, the light wins out, and so it will be as long as the world lasts. Also, there are 2 great gods in the universe, he believes. The god of good and light, and the god of evil and darkness. They are always fighting. This is what life means. There's always fighting, good and evil, light and darkness. This is why there's so much bad in the world. So Zoroaster decided to fight or struggle on the side of good, on the side of light, because he believed, morning after morning, that the sunrise was an assurance that in the end, the light, the goodness, would win out. It was believed that Zoroaster spent 40 days and 40 nights longer alone in the wilderness. He had many more strange experiences, and each time when the spell was over, he stopped and to think about what it all meant, so that when he returned to his village, he had much that he wanted to tell his people. Now, 2,500 years later, people still honor the name of Zoroaster. For them, fire and light are sacred. They are symbols of the great God of light and goodness. For us, although many of us may not believe as Zoroaster did so many years ago, somehow the sunrise seems to us to be still good. Its beams are like an everlasting arm, sheltering us in warmth, protecting our inner light, the bright light inside of all of us.
Our responsive reading this morning is Deep Calls to Deep, an adaptation of Psalm 42. You can read along with the words on your screen. As a deer longs for flowing streams, so my soul longs for you, O God. My tears have been my food day and night, while people say to me continually, "Where is your God?" My soul is cast down within me, therefore I remember you. Deep calls to deep at the thunder of your cataracts. All your waves and your billows have gone over me.
Why are you cast down, O my soul? Hope in God.
Each Sunday, this congregation collects a weekly offering as part of its larger spiritual practice of gratitude. This morning, UU Wellesley Hills will be collecting donations to support Family Promise Metro West, which is currently serving 23 families with 46 children. The resident families are now being housed in a motel to allow for social distancing. The organization has plans to house the current families in motels until the end of April. Since our church building will be closed through May 16th, though, Family Promise will also have to house the families for our week of May 3rd through the 10th. During the weeks that we will have virtual worship, all donations will be taken electronically. Visit our website and go to the UUSWH giving portal. That will allow you to make online donations using Breeze. Once there, be sure to select plate collection from the drop-down menu. It takes maybe a couple of minutes at most, so we invite you to donate now. Please be as generous as you can in your support of Family Promise this Sunday.
unite our hearts in prayer, giving voice to the words of the Reverend Daniel Cantor. O God of many names and mystery beyond all our naming, strengthen our hearts and make peace their inhabitants. Help us to find you in our burdens and in our revelry. Stretch our souls so that we might find a wider embrace of each other, and remind us of our frailty so that we might know each day as an unwarranted return. Hold us in this prayer now, here, for the good of each other. We pray for those among us who need our prayers, those who are ill, mourn, or struggle. We pray for joyful embraces and contented hearts for each one of us. We pray in the names of all those known and unknown, remembered and forgotten. We pray in the names of all the helpers of mankind. Amen. With these words now on our minds and in our hearts, let us enter into the sacred stillness of a shared silence, listening for the wisdom within. Ours is a spiritual community where we find and forge connection. We trust in the strength of our mutual support, knowing how it has sustained us day after day, year after year. We heed its call to build beloved community. Today, we hold in the light those for whom continued social distancing represents a dangerous situation. Those who are disconnected from others because of a want of technology and the span of the digital divide. Those who feel unsafe due to forces within and outside their home. Those whose finances leave them lacking for essentials. Those who rely on a level of care and support that is compromised now. And we lift up all those who are building networks of mutual aid, those who are asking after friends and family and neighbors and even relative strangers, who are tending to the emotional and physical, mental and spiritual costs of others in the midst of this pandemic. Now we invite you to recall the names of persons or places you are holding in your hearts, either as a source of concern or cause for celebration. If you have candles on hand at home, you might want to light one for our collective joys and another one for our collective sorrows. As you feel moved, you may share the names of those persons or places by typing them into our Facebook page. These will be read aloud next Sunday morning, but will be held in all our hearts and thoughts until then. This morning we name the Christmas family: Chris Lilly, Donna Tambiasco, Pat Agostino and her family, Marty and Carmela, Robin Barsert, Anitra, Dan Louie, Robert Peck, Laura and Frank Pate, Sally and Rick Watts, Emily Senecal Miller, Liz Becker and Ben Unger, Maggie Walsh and the VA staff, Lester, Sarah Beth, Regina, Rosalie and Daniela, Garcelle Henry, Connie Dong, Kevin Childress, and millions of other New Yorkers, Eve Slater, and Inger Ross Christensen. These names have been heard and honored. In this community. Alongside these, we know are certain joys and sorrows that remain private and unspoken this hour. Those too have a rightful place in our midst. May fellow feeling encourage all of us toward ever more compassionate living. Our kindled lamps remind us that we are kindred souls. We are never alone in the human condition. There is a love that cares for all.
When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
Earlier this year, John and I visited Puna, the southeast corner of Hawaii's Big Island. The landscape we encountered was radically different from what we'd seen on prior visits. For months in 2018, a fissure called the Eastern Rift spilled lava across the populated area. The eruption destroyed 700 homes and covered vast acreage, while leaving random pockets of lush greenery. If I owned the house that was surrounded by high lava within feet on all sides, I would likely be among those leaving offerings for the fire goddess Pele. Like many UUs, I am an agnostic. I know what I don't believe in, the fire and brimstone god of Dante's Inferno, or the muscular bearded men of the Sistine Chapel, nor do I actually believe in a fire goddess. Yet Pele has piqued my interest because of the forces she represents: creation, destruction, renewal, the cycles of life writ large. She is at the intersection of the vast cold cosmos and the lives of plants, animals, and humans. Thinking about Pele makes me consider whether I believe in a god of creation that takes a personal interest in those who live on our planet. I'm pretty sure I don't. Nonetheless, my worldview includes the idea of divinity. I want to live as if there is a God, upholding the idea of covenant. I believe promises to a theoretical all-seeing presence can serve our communities well. I never use God language, yet believe that each individual has a soul. Is that a contradiction? I don't know. I'm an agnostic. Here are my thoughts on divinity. I'm comfortable combining skepticism and spirituality, using sacred language as poetry or metaphor to tap truths that are not factual. I like the language of experiencing God in moments of awe, rather than believing in a supernatural being. I appreciate words that reflect attributes ascribed to God by faith traditions. Islam talks about the creator. UUism refers to spirit of life. Christianity has Heavenly Father. Judaism has at least 36 Hebrew names for the divine. I love how biblical images evolved. In Exodus, God hands down the 10 Commandments amid thunder and din, terrifying the Israelites. Later in the Bible, God only speaks as a still small voice within each person. That's what lets us see the divine in ourselves and each other. Sad to say, I think history shows that we are on our own. God will not intervene when nature smites us or when cruelty overwhelms the good of shared humanity. Yet, I see value in prayer. In the words of Rabbi Harvey J. Fields, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. This God does not need our affirmations, but by affirming the idea of something bigger than ourselves, we can change our possibilities. We can find hope and compassion. A few weeks ago, Reverend Kelly preached about Emerson's essay, The Oversoul. Our responsive reading spoke of the whole, the wise silence, the universal beauty to which every part and particle is equally related, the eternal one. The UU principles and sources encourage theological pondering. My favorite principles are those that align with my Jewish roots, particularly the Shema affirmation. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Beyond monotheism, the Shema asserts that every element of the world is part of divinity itself. I see this echoed on a human level in the first principle. The inherent worth and dignity of every person derives from Genesis. Just as God breathed life into Adam, even metaphorically, so every human retains that breath. The seventh principle respects the interconnected web of all existence, what Emerson and I would call the oneness of creation. In this UU community, there are agnostics and atheists who flinch at the mention of God. That's fine. We have no creed, and people find meaning in their own ways. Some of you look at the world through a scientific lens, some spiritually, some recognize that it is not necessary to choose between them. Regardless of theology, our UU faith calls us to care for one another and for all life on earth. We can approach this as humanists, believing that people have extra responsibilities because of our outsized impact on the world. We can also embrace stewardship in homage to a God who gave humans the capacity to discern our unique role. We can't wait for a deity to right the wrongs that humans have contributed to. But by being in covenant with each other or with some understanding of divinity, we can live our values and honor creation.
All that we regularly take for granted has, in the midst of closure and crisis, coronavirus and quarantine, become clearer with time. Assumptions that we might have made about our health and livelihood, family and friends, region and country are being called into question and are suddenly subject to our reappraisal. Maybe these prompts can invite us to a kind of divine interrogation. We may feel freer to dispense with the non-essentials in our lives and grow more invested in preserving the essentials. Now that we have entered our second month of the shelter-in-place order in Massachusetts, things that were fixtures in our landscape no longer feel as secure. We may worry about them fading from our memory or even disappearing altogether before we are able to return to them, those restaurants and practices and shops and businesses. We are concerned for the survival of so much these days. So it might seem like a relatively minor point that certain words have lately fallen into disuse, but I do not believe it is, and I am not alone in that belief. In his book, Learning to Speak God from Scratch, Why Sacred Words Are Vanishing and How We Can Reclaim Them, religious writer Jonathan Merritt notes that sacred speech and spiritual conversation are in decline, sadly, and have been for a while now. An analysis Merritt conducted of public rhetoric that calls from collected books, newspapers, web pages, and speeches shows that most religious and spiritual words have been declining in the English-speaking world since the early 20th century. He observes that language about the virtues, words like love, patience, gentleness, faithfulness, have become rarer too, with the humility words like modesty, compassion words like kindness, and gratitude words like thankfulness all declining in common usage by approximately 50%. A survey he did of Americans found that more than a fifth of those surveyed had not had any spiritual conversations in the course of the past year, while 3/5 had had spiritual conversations on very rare occasions, which meant that less than a fifth had regular conversations about spiritual matters. The problem with these trends is that what we name, we notice, and what we notice, we name. Nowadays, we sometimes do neither. Although religious speech might not be a language in the formal sense, it functions like one, Merritt contends. Because of this, it is in danger of becoming a dead language. When the world loses a language, it loses a lot. It loses a particular vocabulary, a unique grammatical structure, and a special fluency that a group of people share in community. You might call us homo verba, Merritt declares. We are word-shaped beings who live word-shaped lives within word-shaped communities. Without those words, we lose the ability to communicate meaningfully with one another. As Merritt suggests, faith would not exist, it cannot exist without words. They are the way religion produces progeny. Someone spoke and a spirit lifted. Do you remember the words that stirred your spirit to this degree? A few of you have shared with me the words that spoke to you most powerfully. They might have been lines from a sermon or a favorite hymn or communal prayer. Whenever you heard them, they announced your arrival in this community. Words have such tremendous power to move us and make claims on us. I tend to feel suspicious of people who are dismissive of words themselves, people who dismiss things as just talk, because it seems to me they have not yet developed an ear for sacred speech and spiritual conversation. In his book, Merritt rightly points out that any dying language can be revived by those who insist on speaking it. We must work together to rekindle confidence in the vocabulary of faith, Merritt argues. I agree wholeheartedly. While our liberal religious tradition has long rejected any creedal tests of personal belief, Unitarian Universalism remains strongly identified as a covenantal faith that is vocal about the good that it will affirm. Our call to worship today, that meditation by the Reverend Susan Manker Seal titled Out of Our Yearning, is a contemporary adaptation of a well-known Universalist bond of union that was popular in the last century. You may be familiar with it. Love is the doctrine of this church, and the quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve human need, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with one another and with God. Written by the late minister L. Griswold Williams, it articulates a divine lexicon that enshrines love and truth and service and seeking and growing in harmony as part and parcel of our collective religious pursuit, a pursuit that is open always to all souls. Even people who are uncomfortable with God language have felt kindly inclined toward this vision. Early on during the coronavirus outbreak, an old friend of mine, a UU minister who now serves as a hospital chaplain out west, began posting a painting on social media each day as an exercise called Visio Divina, which is a Latin term for divine vision. On a daily basis, he invites everyone to contemplate the scene depicted and consider where they glimpse the presence of the sacred. Tellingly, the pictures vary greatly. Some are lovely and bucolic, while others appear desolate and grim. What my friend presumes, of course, is that the sacred is present always and can be spied by all of our eyes if we open them wide enough. More recently, he has made public his heartbreaking accounts of COVID-19 patients dying in his hospital in isolation. In each of these accounts, it is obvious that the spiritual significance of the encounters with people in extremis near the very end of their lives, people I know my friend counts as beloved children of God, is never lost on him. As the death toll in America continues to climb to nearly 40,000, we are grasping the magnitude of the loss we are all facing here. It will ask us to marshal our personal resources in making sense of it somehow. Over the past few weeks, I've come to appreciate this online Visio Divina as an important extension of my friend's chaplaincy, one in which he invites us all into more substantive engagement than we are used to in our social media channels. He asks us to type up our own observations of the scene into the comment box. He encourages us to find the words to describe it. He is asking us to practice sacred speech and engage spiritual conversation day in and day out through this crisis, and it has become a special discipline of mine. Not only is my friend building our shared vocabulary, he is expanding our religious imagination. Every day, he is asking us to notice and name and notice the divine. Every day, I find, I welcome that opportunity. In his book, Learning to Speak God from Scratch, Merritt quotes at length a bold contemporary translation of the famous prologue from the Gospel of John. This translation breathes new life into it. It all arose out of a conversation within God. In fact, the conversation was God. So God started the discussion, and everything came out of this, and nothing happened without consultation. This was the life that was the light shining in the darkness which neither understood nor quenched its creativity. Children were born out of sharing in the creative activity of God. They heard the conversation still going on here, now, and took part, discovering a new way of being a people. To be invited to share in a conversation about the nature of life was for them a glorious opportunity not to be missed. Any opportunity we are given these days to expand our divine lexicon seems to me one we ought to seize. Here at UU Wellesley Hills, we have these opportunities in our midweek reflection and in our touchstone groups, and in all the other connections we are forging now. The yearnings we feel, the fears that plague us, the regrets we have, the loves we have known, the hardships we face, the hopes we yet harbor, all of these things belong in our ongoing conversation and all communicate important notions of the holy. I want us to reclaim religious language so that we can be in honest, intimate consultation with one another. That question the psalmist so poignantly poses will, for some of us, take on a special urgency now. Where is your God? Where is your God? The answer saints, sages, and even saviors have given us are always the same, very near. Near to our experiences and dilemmas and joys and sorrows and confusions. That divine presence may be within us or between us or around us, but it remains amidst the greatest uncertainties of our lives. This current pandemic presents us with a pivotal moment in history when we are asked to consider what commands our allegiances, what represents our ultimate concerns, what binds us to one another in the human family. These are all religious questions, of course. They deserve religious responses from us. The more fluent we become in sacred speech and spiritual conversation, the better we can provide them for ourselves and for others. Grant us wisdom, grant us courage, we sing, for the living of these days. Grant us wisdom, grant us courage, eyes to see and ears to hear. Let us open our eyes, let us open our ears, let us open our hearts to wisdom. As people of faith, we can stay well-versed in what abides and endures. When we break our polite and conditioned silences, we may hear ourselves speaking some forgotten but still eternal truths, ones we very much need to hear today.
Please join me in singing our final hymn, Nearer, My God, to Thee.
our worship this morning is concluding, we take a moment to extinguish our chalices. Our closing words are printed in the Sunday order of service. Extinguishing this flame which has burned bright in our midst, we revere what has been kindled within each one of us. Warmth and community, the light of truth, a perpetual spark of hope. Knowing abundant blessing, we choose to bless the world. May the quality of each of our lives be our benediction and a blessing to all we touch. Those who take hold of life, may you find life returning your embrace. Those who sense God, may you find God always with you. Those who seek the right path, may the way appear ahead. Go on in peace, remembering that you are well loved and we are all one. So it is, so may it always be.